afternoon. My name is Lyle Daniels, and I'm with my friend Elizabeth Benson Watkins this afternoon. Miss Watkins is going to talk about how it was to live in the segregated South, how it was to register to vote back in the 60s. And I want you to introduce yourself, Miss Watkins.
I'm Elizabeth Benson Watkins, and I grew up in Rosedale, Alabama. Some of you, if you can, it is on Google, so you can Google it and see what type of town it was. But in this town was mostly blacks, and they all helped each other. And the main thing, they were all homeowners. We had a lot of homeowners, and with the homeowners, it's a difference in being in a home, little community where you have homeowners rather than a lot of renters. Eventually, it became where they did have renters because there was one person, one man named Damon Lee, who decided to buy a lot of land and build these shotgun houses. I'm sure you've heard about a shotgun house.
Yes, I have.
Right, that's a house where you can see from the front to the back, straight to the back. Okay, so he did build a lot and start renting, but most of the homes in Rosedale were homeowners.
Okay. What year was it when you first tried to register to vote?
I only tried one time, and I tried in 1965. You had to be 21 years old to register to vote. And I got up early that morning. I had to be downtown at 6:30 to get in the lines because the lines were so long. The lines probably looked like they look now with people going to register to vote. In the meantime, I got in line and I stood there for about an hour, and I was talking to the gentleman in front of me, and he was telling me that he had worked all night long. And I said, I slept all night long. If this man worked all night long, and I slept all night long, I can stand in this line. But I was really ready to leave. That's how I felt. Why should I stand in the line this long to go to register to vote? And I stood in the line with him. We finally ended up, probably about 4:30, we probably ended up getting into the building to vote. We had to wait in line while they went to eat lunch from 12 o'clock to 1:15. And there was no one to offer us any water or anything. If you didn't have your water with, at the time, bottled water wasn't popular.
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
No. And you just stood there. You just stood and waited all day long. You know, I didn't take a lunch or anything, and the man in front of me didn't have a lunch or anything. So we just waited, you know. And then we just talked. You talked to everybody. Everybody come around, you talk.
So that just goes to show how important voting is.
Yes.
She stayed out there with no water, no cell phone, no iPad. And she stood in line for hours to register to vote. So if she could have done that in the hot sun in Alabama in 1965, we can definitely do that with all the electronics that we have today.
Yes, because you can even go online and vote.
Exactly. So it's made it a lot easier for us to vote in 2020. So we have no excuse to not vote. I heard there was often different questions, series of unnecessary questions that Black Americans had to ask in order to vote. Were you ever, did anybody ever have you ask those questions of you?
Well, you knew you were going to have to answer all these questions before they were registered to vote. And the first thing they asked you to do to recite the preamble. And you had to recite the preamble to them. But you already knew that when you got there. So you had learned this preamble, and you had this preamble in your head down pat. Because you couldn't stumble. Because if you stumble, they'd tell you stop and start all over again.
So can you explain, some of the people may not know what a preamble is. Can you explain?
Yeah, the preamble is the beginning of the Constitution.
Okay.
You know, and if you can look online and find it, it'll give you all the words in it. And then they will go and ask you certain questions about they would ask questions about the Constitution. But a lot of times you already had these answers because anybody that went to the poll always went back to the churches and they gave a list of things that were asked. So you had a cheat sheet because you always knew some of the things that they were going to ask you, right? And then you had to pay $1.50 to vote. You had to pay what they call a poll tax. I don't know if whites paid poll tax or just black paid poll tax. I'm not really sure about that.
Okay, wow. So I know that there were some things that you had to deal with, but did you feel any intimidation, any harassment from white people that were trying to keep you from voting outside while you were in line?
No, we didn't have that.
Okay.
I didn't have that at all.
Okay. Okay. And who was the first person that you voted for? And did they win that election that year?
You know, I can't remember voting for a president because I registered to vote in 65 and they didn't vote again for president because they had just voted in 64.
Okay.
So, and I was trying to remember who did I vote for because by this time, I was out of school and I had moved to Cleveland. I was living in Cleveland, Ohio in '68. So I don't even remember. I know I voted, but I don't even remember who the president was at that time.
Okay. So you actually remember? Do you actually remember growing up with Jim Crow years, with the height of segregation, in the 40s and 50s and 60s? Do you actually remember going through back doors and colored drinking water fountains?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so, can you just kind of explain some of that?
I don't remember the 40s because I was born in '44.
Okay, sorry.
So sorry. I remember the 50s, and some of the 50s, and I remember all of the 60s.
Okay.
I remember the 60s. And I just remember how I used to go to the movies. We paid 10 cents to go to the movies, but we went to a side door and went upstairs. We had to go in the balcony for the movies. And I remember we used to go to the zoo, and there were white signs and black signs. And about 2 years ago, my niece was talking to me, and she was telling me about the time that I snatched her up from the water fountain, because she was from Cleveland, Ohio, so she said she looked at the black fountain and it was dirty and she didn't want to drink out of it, so she went to the white fountain. She said, I snatched her by the back of her head and said, you're trying to get us killed.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's how bad it was. You know, you just couldn't couldn't drink out the fountain. The bathroom was the same way. But basically we were taught that don't drink any water when you're out and don't use the bathroom. So you didn't do that. You tried not to do that, you know, unless you were in your own area.
Do you remember segregated buses?
Oh my God, do I remember segregated buses?
So there was actually a sign that when more white people would come, they would move the sign further back.
And ask you to move if you're sitting in the seat behind the sign, and they needed this seat for white people, they would tell you to move. You knew automatically move, so you would move. They would take that sign and move the sign back, and then you would move back. But the main thing I remember is, you know, the bus. Tell you we lived in Homewood. Well, it was Rosedale, but it's Homewood now. They've named it Homewood. If all the buses came through Homewood, they came through this little area because all the white folks lived up on the mountain this way, Mountain Brook this way, in Edgewood. So it was 2 buses that came through there. So if you caught the bus in the evening where all these people were getting off work going home, the buses were full. They were standing up in the front and they were front. So you would pay your money, or go on the bus, pay your money, get off the bus, go to the back door, and go in the back door. And that's how you got on the bus when it was crowded.
Wow.
You know, that's what I said, wow. So when they finally passed that law that we can sit anywhere on the bus we wanted to, I sat on the front seat for a long time. I would get on the bus and sit on the front seat. I didn't even try to go to the back because it didn't matter to me. I wanted to sit on the front seat. That's why I sat.
Because you deserved to sit in the
Because I deserved to sit there.
Exactly. So you do remember the Martin Luther King boycott, the bus boycott.
Yes, my brother marched in that. My brother was in school at Alabama State at the time.
Okay.
So he did a lot of activities with them.
Okay, awesome. So I have another question. So with this current administration, do you feel like the country is moving forward in the right direction, or do you believe some part of this administration is trying to keep people of color back and not forward?
Well, you want me to talk about our commander-in-chief?
Yes.
Okay, our commander-in-chief is not what he should be in that position, because he knows he says anything to anyone, and he's not the kind of person that should be in that position. And I think he would like to keep us from moving forward, but this is our time now. I think it's time for the black and browns to move, and that has a lot to do with the Lord. God is going to move us up. I think he has something in store for us right now.
Amen.
Yeah, I really do think that, because he can't. And if you don't go out to vote, he's going to be in office again, and we're not going to move. We're not going anywhere. He's going to keep us. He's going to try to keep us down, but he can't do anything unless he can't do what he think he can. But the Lord going to set him free too, so we'll all be free.
Amen. All right. With the electoral college in place, do you truly believe that your vote counts?
I really don't. And I know it doesn't count. I know it has to be the electoral colleges that they finally elect a president, but I still need to get out there to vote for these other people so we can get some other people in Congress.
So you do still believe that you should still vote, even though you know the electoral college is
That's
in
my
place?
right.
That you're right,
That's
and you're
my
going
right.
to exercise your right.
I'm going to exercise my right, and I advise everybody to exercise that right.
So what would you tell a young generation, a young black man, young black lady, a brown young person in this day about voting, how important it is to them when they say, well, my vote doesn't count anyway, they're going to do whatever they want? What would you tell them?
You know, I had an experience with one of my nephews, and we used to play a lot of cards together, and he was just talking, well, I'm not going to go vote. My vote. When I finished talking to him and telling him how long I stood in line and how many people have stood in line for you to be able to go to freely sign your name and just go and vote, why wouldn't you go? We struggled. That was a struggle for us. That was a struggle for me to stand in line all day long. You know, with nothing to eat. I didn't have a lunch. I didn't have anything, you know. But it's important that you go and vote. That's your right. You have to go and vote. You know, don't sit around and talk about your vote won't count. It will count. It'll count somewhere, you know. And I hope that everybody goes out and vote. You know, I want everybody to go out and vote, especially blacks. You know, we did a lot of things to get this right to go to vote. So I think you should go out to vote at any time. Everybody, all youngsters and anybody. My grandson is 18. First thing I asked him when he turned 18, I said, "Are you a registered voter?" He said, "Yeah, they did it in school."
Oh, wow, okay.
So now that's good. They did
Yeah.
it. He said they did. I said, okay, good then. But all you got to do is put your name and your date of birth and sign your name. I mean, who can't do that?
Exactly. When I went to go vote early last week, we had an 18-year-old in there, first-time voter, and he was so excited.
Yeah.
Everybody in the polling station was so excited to see this young man voting for the first time. So that's an encouragement to young people. Yes, you need to go out and vote.
I used to take my children with me when I went to vote. When they were young, and I would always take them. You know, it was never really a long line. You know, it was a line, but nothing like the lines that they have in now. So I would always take them to vote because I explained to them from day one, this is so important. You must go and vote. That is so important.
So important. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So you see, Ms. Vincent Watkins has gone through a lot just to vote. And we need to respect our older generation, what they have gone through to make our lives much the easiest the way it is at this time in our lives. So I just want to thank Mrs. Vincent Watkins for spending a few minutes with me. I just want to put this out. I want to share this with people. Even though if you have not registered to vote early, please do not let the day go by without voting. This is a very important election. Also, I just want to let you know, not only do you vote for the president, but vote for your local.
Yes.
The local people that are in Congress and your senators and your governors, because that all plays a part of our rights. And we don't want our rights taken away. We fought for our rights. Our ancestors have fought for our rights. So we want to continue to grow and move in this country that we are in and we deserve to be in. We help build. So get out there and vote. Young people, get out there and vote. Old people, get out there and vote.
Right.
Your vote does count. So.
And you know one thing, if you're over 75, you don't have to stand in the line.
I saw that.
Yeah, you just go talk to the registrar and she would get you in line and let you go on and vote. Which is good. I had to do this. It was a long line. I knew I couldn't stand in line, so I called down to the Board of Election, and they said, if you're over 75, just go up and tell the registrar, and I did, and I went right away in there and voted.
Exactly.
So take advantage of whatever you have.
Take advantage. If you're 75, skip that line. Go in there and vote.
Right.
All right. Thank you, folks, for joining me.